Well, 2023 went about as planned. The Fed said they wanted to raise interest rates so that the housing market would slow down, and that it did. Every year, I like doing these recap videos for the housing market from the year prior and predictions going into the next year. So this video will be about 2023's housing market in Charleston and the economy going into 2024. To start, I just wanted to recap how the housing market went last year. In 2023, we saw interest rates hit a 2-decade high, while at the same time, sales prices were at their highest. So affordability has continued to be a major concern for people looking to buy or sell. I say sell too because when you sell a house and you plan on going somewhere else, you'll run into the affordability factor even if you're able to cash in on a ton of your equity. So in general, 2023 was definitely a challenge for buyers. Like I said, mortgage rates were high, inventory remained low, and sales prices continued to climb. Now part of this is due to the lock-in effect I've mentioned before. This is where sellers who refinanced or purchased at a 2 or 3% interest rate don't want to lose that awesome deal just to go buy another house at a 6 or 7% interest rate and with also a higher sales price. This meant that less people were selling even if they wanted to, but with this inventory so low, it kept it as a seller's market because there weren't as many homes for buyers to choose from. While some markets around the country suffered with their prices, Charleston remained a seller's market and prices are still on the rise. So let's get into some of the statistics so it all ties together. First of all, we saw a major decrease in the new listings, like I mentioned, because of this lock-in effect where people don't want to lose their interest rate in order to buy in a market that's not a great time to buy because there's not all that much to choose from. So we saw an 11% decrease in new listings on the market. Pending sales were also down by 8.9% compared to 2022. But I do want to point out something real quick that'll be relevant throughout the video. So comparing now to 2020 and 2021, when the market went wild because of the super low interest rates, is not really fair. During that time, the market was essentially given a poison pill. With interest rates being so low, it caused a buyer frenzy, which made housing prices go out of control. So when we start to compare to before that time, we're actually starting to get closer to the trend, which is really good because we don't want a market like 2020 was forever. So we had about 17,000 pending sales in 2023, which isn't too far off from the 18,000 we had in 2019. But it does still show the impact that interest rates had on the housing market here. The next one is closed sales. So how many homes actually sold in Charleston? And this is the greater Charleston area, so it includes areas like Somerville and beyond. We had 16,890 closed sales, which is down 15.2% since the year prior. Now that's a pretty big decrease, so it really shows the effects of the market. The next stat is the inventory of homes for sale. So this is how many homes are on the market at a given time. In 2023, we had about 2,923 homes for sale, which is down 4.1% since last year. Now compared to the years prior, 4% is not that bad, as you'll see here. We had a decrease of 47% in 2020, 39% in 2021, and then an increase at 82% in 2022, and finally we're kind of leveling off at 3,000. Now this still is not nearly enough homes that we need for it to be a healthy, balanced market. One good or bad thing, depending on how you're looking at it, is that the median sales price has been consistently up year over year. So in 2023, the median sales price rose by 1.5%, bringing it to about $405,000. Obviously for sellers, this is great because it means they have more equity in their home, but for buyers, it's not so great because affordability is already an issue and increasing the sales price doesn't help. So that 1.5% increase is kind of what the Fed was going to slow down this crazy increase in prices. Median sales price tends to be a better measurement than average because outliers can affect the average much more than the median price. But if you prefer average sales price, it increased by 4.4% over last year, which is much less than we were seeing years prior. Next is days on market until sale. This one is really important for buyers because if you see how long a home has been on the market, it kind of gives you an idea of how competitive it is and how much negotiating power you might have. So finally, some good news for buyers is that the days on market until sale were 34, which is up 70% since the 20 days on market it was in 2022. And if we're comparing to the pre-COVID years, the crazy years we had, we're getting closer to that healthier mark, which was about 50 days on the market. This next stat is the percent of original list price received. So when you're making an offer on a home, it's always helpful to know what the average is in the area. If homes are selling for like 101% of the list price, it means they're consistently selling over the asking price. So you probably won't want to come in super low because your offer probably won't get accepted. On the other hand, if the average is below 100, that means that people are offering below the asking price and getting it. So this year we saw a decrease by 1.9%, bringing the percent of original list price received to 97.1%. Now, it's also helpful to look at the property types and the differences between them, since the market for single-family homes and things like condos and townhomes are different. So for single-family homes, the average days on market is now 35. For condos and townhomes, it's about 29. It's interesting because we actually saw a flip in those two. Going into 2023, we finally saw condos actually start to have less days on market than single-family homes. At the same time, the price of townhomes and condos went up by 4.8% compared to the 1.2% change in single-family homes. My thinking on this is that townhomes and condos tend to be lower in price, so we had more buyers turn to townhomes and condos to save more money compared to buying a house that's more in budget. Townhomes and condos also received a higher percentage of the list price, so 99% compared to the 98.7% for single-family homes. This is interesting too. So the top market share for townhomes and condos were the areas of Folly Beach, Seabrook Island, Kiowa, Isle of Palms, Daniel Island, Lower Mount Pleasant, downtown Charleston, Edisto, Hanahan, and the Dorchester Road area. Then the top 10 areas for single-family market share were Goose Creek and Moncks Corner, likely due to all of the new construction in that area, Greater Somerville area, again, new construction, Berkeley County, Johns Island, Dorchester County, the Wando-Cainhoy area, Sullivan's Island, West Ashley, Upper Mount Pleasant, and Greater North Charleston. The next stat is about distressed homes. So this is foreclosures, short sales, things like that. As affordability has become an issue and inventory has been so low, more buyers have been asking about foreclosures as a possible way to get into the housing market without completely breaking the bank. We have seen such a low amount of distressed homes because so many people that need to sell have been able to tap into their equity and not have to go into the foreclosure process. So when they sell, they're able to pay off their loan, taxes, and probably make a profit too on top of that. So in 2021, we saw like a record low of distressed properties, and now it's increasing, but it's still only 0.7% of closed sales. Now let's talk about new construction, because that's a huge segment of our market here. According to this data, in November of 2019 is when we hit the peak of new construction inventory. So since then, even though we've been building like crazy, there have still been less homes for sale. The top areas for new construction market share are Goose Creek and Moncks Corner, the Wando-Cainhoy area, Greater Somerville area, and Johns Island. If you're still with me through all these numbers, I appreciate you. The next stat is pretty cool because it shows the number of showings overall that happened in the market in 2023. So the median number of showings before a home went under contract was 9. But overall, we had a 10.2% drop in showings. So this obviously shows that there weren't as many buyers looking. March of 2023 was the peak showing activity month, which makes sense because the spring and summer markets tend to be the hottest of the year. Next thing is the area overview. So if you like learning about all of these stats but want to know them for a specific area of Charleston, here is where you should look. Here it shows you all the statistics you might want, from closed sales to days on market, the number of showings depending, and much more. I obviously won't read all of this info because that would take forever and be very boring, but you can pause the video if you'd like to take a further look, or I can email this document to you. The next page is also the area historical median prices, which just shows that we've been seeing a steady incline in prices overall everywhere in the Charleston market. Now that we've talked about the local housing market data from Charleston, let's talk about some of the overarching economical data from South Carolina and the United States. Now, I'm not an economist, so I'll have slides by Joey Von Nessen, who presents to the Realtor board here every year, who has awesome information that is all very applicable to the housing market. So as we've seen, the economy was a little overheated due to the super low interest rates and the artificial boost that we got, and is finally starting to cool down because of the aggressive moves by the Federal Reserve. The South Carolina economy continues to be resilient in face of this post-COVID readjustment, but we are still fighting some of the inflation that we've been seeing. So as stated by Joey Von Nessen, the theme of 2024 is readjustment. We're finally starting to get back to a healthy market and more sustainable economy. As this graph shows, the South Carolina employment level is above the pre-pandemic peak. So we are right in trend with where we should stand as far as employment goes. The total assets of US households is also growing. Also, consumer spending is still up, which shows that our economy is going pretty strongly. We saw a major dip in consumer spending in 2020, but now we're right on trend with where we should be per inflation. As he states here, we're still readjusting from the goods bubble that drove the surge in manufacturing and housing, and we're starting to see more service-based spending. And this one is a little brag on Charleston because its percent of employment gains since 2020 is way above those of other cities in South Carolina. So South Carolina as a whole had a 5.9% increase in employment gains since 2020, and Charleston saw a 12.7% increase. Myrtle Beach was next at 8.8%, and then Greenville at 6.6%. So to summarize these past few slides, there's been steady consumer spending, household financial resources are stabilizing, and it's a healthy labor market. The bad news is inflation and rising interest rates have taken their toll on buyers' purchasing power, which has caused a major issue with affordability as we've been seeing. Here you can see that the US inflation rate was 17.9%, and obviously energy and food were way above that, while hourly earnings were only up by 14.5%. So as we know, wages have not kept up with the US inflation as a whole. The good news is that inflation has been slowed by the rise in the interest rates. So we're back down to a more normal level of inflation, but they're still trying to get to that 2% mark, but it's way better than the 8% that we saw near its peak. However, even though inflation is back down to a more reasonable level, US consumer sentiment is still very low. This means that people are not happy and not feeling good about the economy and where we are. As he states here, housing markets represent the front lines in the battle against inflation. This is why the Federal Reserve went after the housing market with the interest rates first, because they knew that this would slow down a lot of the inflation that we were seeing. This graph is important because it shows the growth in US housing costs since 2014. We saw a pretty steady growth in housing costs year over year, and then everything got so much more expensive. And so he wanted to point out here that housing costs have been rising at a slower rate, but they're not decreasing. So prices are not coming down, unfortunately, for buyers, but at least they're rising at a slower rate. And now you're probably wondering where mortgage rates are. This is different from person to person. So if you're looking to get a loan, it depends on what kind of loan you're looking for, your credit score, income. But overall, the US mortgage interest rates are about 6.8% according to Freddie Mac. This seems really high, and it is a 2-decade high, but historically, a 6% rate really isn't that bad. Just ask your grandparents. The issue is that this interest rate is tied to record high median sales prices nationwide. In this graph, we see housing sales were down nationwide. So we were pretty much back to the numbers that we had around 2018 when it came to the number of homes sold. More good news is that the bulk of the housing market sales readjustment period is behind us, and the Federal Reserve has already said that it's planning on lowering rates again, which will be great for buyers, making that affordability better, even though prices will continue to rise. This graph also shows the US total inventory of existing homes in millions, and as you're seeing, we have record low inventory, which is the same thing we've been saying for years now, and hopefully we finally start to see a recovery of this. And so I mentioned in the Charleston data that days on market have increased compared to last year, but if you compare it to 2019, it's still down by 45%. So this shows that it is still very much a seller's market, as homes are not sitting long on the market. Another crazy stat is that 50% of pending sales in Charleston were new construction. This is a major increase since in 2019, when 28% of pending sales were new construction. This shows the shortage that we had in new construction as after 2008. So what do we expect to happen in 2024? The major factors will be the population growth, strength of the labor market, and mortgage interest rates, which we're hoping will come down because the Federal Reserve has said they plan on having them come down. Here in Charleston, we're experiencing the growth in population as the rest of the Southeast. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the southeastern United States is projected to experience more population gains than any other U.S. region through the year 2040. So in general, to sum up all of this data, 2023 definitely had a slowdown in sales and inventory while prices remained high. Going into 2024, we expect more buyer activity as people adjust to the new prices and interest rates, and we'll hopefully see more inventory. If the Federal Reserve lowers rates too much, though, we'll have a similar effect that we had in the COVID years, where there will be a buyer frenzy of all the people who have been waiting on the sidelines for this to happen. So we hope mortgage rates won't come down too much, but just enough to help buyers with the affordability factor. Inflation still continues to be a threat for the economy, so if it doesn't keep decreasing, they might leave interest rates higher for a while, which would keep the economy and the housing market at a cooler level. I hope you enjoyed getting into some of these numbers. It's always helpful to see what the market is doing if you're planning on buying or selling in an area. And if you have any questions about the Charleston housing market, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm a local realtor here, and I'd love to help you navigate this new market in 2024.